Thank you very much, Frank and EJ and Betsy. We are officially past our time. I'm going to ask one question and ask each of you to respond as briefly as possible. First of all, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, there was some evidence that volatility has already increased in state revenue streams, particularly here in New York, and may increase even further in the years ahead because of heavy reliance on the personal income tax and volatile income sources such as capital gains. First of all, do you agree that that is an issue? And if so, does that suggest that intra-year, significant intra-year budget gaps will become more frequent and more substantial? And if so, what do we do about that? EJ, let me start with you, because I think that you said, that you already answered at least that last part of the question, that you think the governor should simply have the authority to impound, and I don't know whether you would add to that.
Well, I think I agree pretty much with the premise of your question. You notice when I talked, I didn't get too much into my own policy prescriptions. I mean, but I don't mind, Frank or Betsy getting into them. I mean, I tend to agree with Betsy more than Frank. The Ravitch plan strives to be agnostic on policy, which I think is one of its greatest flaws. I don't think there's a mechanical means to fix all our problems. The short answer to your question is yes, I think there is going to be more volatility and unpredictability in revenue flows, both because of the nature of what's happening in the economy and because of what's happening with federal taxes starting next year. There's going to be very, very significant federal tax increases that affect our tax base in ways that we're not fully prepared for necessarily. So I think that is an argument for giving the governor impound authority. I'm not just saying blanket, give him unilateral impound authority. I think a statutory scheme can be developed wherein there are certain guidelines that have to be met for establishing when a governor needs to go to the legislature and say we need to impound spending, and that if there's not a response from the legislature within a period of time, the governor has to have authority pursuant to those guidelines, which obviously can then be litigated if necessary, to go ahead and do what he needs to do, and not on a pro rata basis, but on a selective basis, as he just did or has done in the past few months.
Betsy?
Well, I think in general, volatility is a concern in New York State that's been huge. I don't know if it's going to be as big a concern going forward. I guess it depends what you think is going to happen in the financial services sector, but it's definitely present with us and with every state that has a heavy dependence on the personal income tax. We're not different in that. In fact, I think when you look at the last period of time that we went through in 2002 and 2003, our projections were a little more conservative than some other states. So it's really all about how you budget and how you manage what you think is going to happen. And we need to be very conservative in that, obviously, because we are very susceptible to the downside risk. I think we do need to have greater reserves built up. And that's something that is addressed in a lot of different proposals that have come forward in budget reform. And we already have added some, as Frank alluded to in his talk, with the Spitzer changes in 2007. So, then there's a limit to that too. I mean, how much do you set aside from your taxpayers? How much will they tolerate in terms of having that money not available to them, but for use in government? So I think, it's always a question about, the sort of bootstraps and belts and things, or belt and suspenders you can try to put together in a downturn. And we would hope for federal aid, which in this case we got a more significant package. So, and maybe some temporary tax increases. So I don't think there's any magic to figuring out how New York deals with volatility going forward. It's with us, and I'm not sure in terms of the unilateral impoundment. I mean, what is on the table is a pro rata. The governor already has strong impoundment powers for state ops and can do quite a bit of that. It's local aid, really, that we're talking about adding. And that, I don't know if I would go as far as EJ and say, let's let the governor do that whenever he needs to. But I definitely think that if we did have some impoundment powers, maybe pro rata, which is the answer to the legislature wanting to know how it's going to be done, has more political life than the governor actually getting full authority over everything. I guess I'm in the middle of the road on that one.
Right.
I think the most important thing is, as the section of the Ravitch report I quoted, is building up a larger reserve. I mean, if you really did move to all state funds as your basis for balance, 10 to 15% of that would be 8 to 10 billion. That would be a significant reserve, would take a number of years to build up, and would help a lot during bad times.
Thank you. Well, we are past our time, as I mentioned, and we could certainly spend a lot more time with Betsy and EJ and Frank, but I think we have reached the end of our period, so please join me in thanking them.